Hey everyone, it's Ryan, back again for sonofvin. Well, here we are. It's summer of 2021. The pandemic is hopefully behind us, right? And it is time to celebrate, at least somewhat, and try to stay safe in the process. And you know what? Okay, pause that right there. Before I get any further, I just have to say, I am not a financial advisor, and anything I say in this video should be taken with like the tiniest grain of salt, so do not take my advice for any financial reason, all right? Seriously. Okay, anyway, back to the video. So, if you've been living under a rock for the past like 10 years, something has been starting to take the world by storm. Whether people really want to admit it or not, or accept it, there is something called cryptocurrencies that have been around since actually technically 2008 when Bitcoin first took off. And then several years after that, Litecoin, and then other coins continued down, and here we are like 10 plus years later, and there are just so many out there that it's hard to even fathom how many there truly are. Unfortunately, something always tends to be brought up when people say Bitcoin. They always like to try to claim that it is some sort of a scam. It is only used by money launderers. It is only used by drug lords, prostitutes, etc. Only bad people. But that's actually further from the truth. I mean, technically speaking, any currency can be used by any of those types of people all the time. I mean, we've had movies for, I don't know, 50 years about money laundering and what have you, with banks actually helping along the way. So the fact that people try to claim that cryptocurrencies actually got issues with all of those is nothing new to any other financial systems. So as I was saying, there are actually so many different types of cryptocurrencies out there that it's hard to really know which ones are good, which ones are bad. But you know, now we have a lot of institutions actually offering it. Banks are using it to actually transmit money back and forth. I mean, the term blockchain, which technically is what Bitcoin is, a lot of companies are actually using their own private blockchains these days. So it's not necessarily something bad, it's just people like to connect the dots to Bitcoin and always claim that it is a bad item. But further from the truth, at least you can tell my own opinion about this matter. Anyway, Bitcoin has been around for a really long time. And in fact, if you have read my book that I wrote 2017, Disregarded Entity, Lessons Learned by a 15-Year Freelancer, I actually mentioned that I have been paid before in Bitcoin, and I've actually used it to send money to people I've worked with that I've paid. And it works really easy, especially if that person isn't in your own country. It's a quick way because the banks and the systems make it hard to transact money back and forth, and there's always like a gazillion fees on top of it. So it worked really well in those days. Now, you know, in the early days of Bitcoin, when it was worth much less, and it was much quicker because there just was fewer transactions going on, it was actually conceived to be something you would be able to tap with your phone and go pay for a coffee, or to, you know, use for an Uber ride or what have you, and, you know, actually pay for food, which, funny enough, I partaked in something called Bitcoin Pizza Day, which this was the top of the pizza box actually. And what it was is a guy back roughly 10 years or so ago bought 2 pizzas using a bunch of Bitcoins that would be now worth like, I don't know, several $100,000, give or take, depending on how much Bitcoin's worth at this split second. But you know, it's kind of a funny thing to think, but this guy used it for its original purpose. And you know, of course, now if he'd held on to that, he'd have a lot more money, but you never know. So anyway, you know, cryptocurrencies have been around, like I said, over 10 years now, and it's not going to end. The governments are kind of pushing back here and there on it. There's a little more like transparency on who purchases what with it now, but it's not something that's going to go away anytime soon. In fact, a lot of them, like Ethereum, actually have so many more purposes, and I expect them to continue to grow in the near future. Now, how does this deal with wine? How does Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies relate to wine? Well, I mentioned earlier blockchains. One of the first real good purposes for Bitcoin, actually technically not Bitcoin, blockchains for wine, is that they could basically, someone could use a blockchain to actually track the entire process from the moment the grape is picked all the way up till it's bottled, and how that bottle gets taken via a truck to a warehouse, and then from that warehouse to a distributor, and then from that distributor to a store, or wherever you go. You can actually use a QR code on that bottle and pull up an app and just basically see the log file see if everything that has gone on with that particular wine. And so you kind of have a good transparency of where's the thing came from, how authentic it is. In fact, a lot of the bigger wineries now, some of the like first growths and the really expensive wines of the world, are starting to include codes on their wines. And I'm sure some of them are using blockchains to help you basically use that QR code and to basically see this is an authentic bottle of wine. Some of them are starting to use the NFT route, which is the non-fungible token, which basically is like you can pull up, you have your bottle, you scan a code, and it shows you that you are the actual owner of a real authentic bottle by looking at the NFT of this bottle. That's one way to verify that it is truly an authentic wine, because there are, especially when you get to the really expensive wines, a lot of fakes. If you've ever seen the documentary Sour Grapes, you know what I'm talking about. So there are a lot of possibilities for that type of thing, that blockchain can really help wine make sure that it's authentic, and you can actually see it from step A to all the way to the end. In fact, that process is being used on other items, especially in other countries more than the US right now, that you can use blockchain. Some of them are private. You can see where your produce in the grocery store has come from. You can track all of its processes. So you really have a good idea, if there's anything wrong with this product you're purchasing. There are public blockchains as well, like one called VeChain that has been doing this for a while as well, that really helps people understand where their product is coming from. So that's part of what blockchain cryptocurrencies can help with wine. The other side, of course, is cryptocurrencies are used for money, and people can actually use it to purchase wine. And for this tasting, finally, we're here, that this tasting is about wines that actually not only can be purchased with Bitcoin, and in this case, these can. I don't think these can, but they actually are emblems, and they actually promote Bitcoin in some way via their names of the bottles. This is actually from a negociant in France, in Bordeaux. They have set up a separate offshoot unit of their company. They actually call it BTC Wine. So you're actually promoting Bitcoin through wine. And I believe they started doing this in 2017 or 2018, where you can actually buy like the top growths, several Grand Crus, what have you, in case forms, using Bitcoin and some of the other Litecoins as well. Now, they also have decided to emblem some couple of wines with the actual term of Bitcoin, and create their own Grand Crus that have the Bitcoin name on it, because Bitcoin as a name is not something that is trademarkable or copyrighted. So anybody can technically use it, though I believe they themselves have trademarked BTC Wine, so nobody else can actually use that term. So these are actually just normal Bordeaux wines that they have now emblemed using the Bitcoin name. In fact, this one here is they've called Bitcoin La Cuvée. It is a Margaux, and I believe this one is like heavy on the Cabernet, light on the Merlot, because that's your typical left bank Bordeaux wine. And on this side, we've got Bitcoin La Cuvée, and it's a Saint-Emilion. This one is actually a Grand Cru. And this is right bank. I believe it is heavy on the Merlot and light on the Cab Franc is this one. And these are very interesting because you have to order them in a 6-pack, and they come in a nice wooden box with an emblem of Bitcoin, which, if you can see behind me, is right back here. So you can kind of get an idea of the steps that are taken. And this arrived from Bordeaux not too long ago for me. So I'm kind of happy to get these because they're limited edition. There's only so many. In fact, all of them have numbers on them, very low numbers. So while yeah, they're just normal, Bordeaux wines, it's kind of cool because they got the Bitcoin name on them. It'd be nicer if they actually came with some Bitcoin, but I understand. These guys accept Bitcoin and for payment of wine, and hey, Bitcoin does fluctuate a lot. Technically, someone buys these wines with Bitcoin or a Litecoin or any other altcoins today. If this company holds on to that coin for a while, that actually makes their coins worth more than when the person originally purchased. So that actually kind of works out to the winery by accepting this, especially if they started in 2018 or so, because Bitcoin is worth so much more than it was back then. So that's certainly helped them a lot. But we shall see how this works out for them, and we will try these wines today. And in fact, I'll open both of these because these are both unique. Though they actually say, in fact, they gave me a little letter with it that says, "Dear Ryan, thank you for your order. To hold or drink, the choice is yours. Regards." So I did see on their site that they talk about these being perfectly capable of being stored away for 10 plus years and still hitting their prime. So I've got a lot more. I will go ahead and open them as a much younger wine because I believe they're both 2017s and fairly young, but still very much drinkable, I'm sure. And then on this side, we actually have a very different kind of concept because now these wines both come from Bordeaux. These are all actually, and they're different. These are actually all the exact same wine. They're just emblemed differently. This company is, I would say, 80% of their business is more about the fact that they do these custom etchings on their bottles, and 20% about the wine inside of it. Because ultimately, the etchings are really cool. It's a cool concept. In fact, Mano's Wine is their name. They're based in Kansas City, Missouri, which isn't really close to any major wine region. And in this case, all of these wines are listed as a California Cabernet Sauvignon. So that's, pretty broad, which means typically the wines are blends of pretty much any Cabernets throughout the state of California can all be blended together in one Cabernet. As long as it's within the state of California, that AVA per se is California. Therefore, this makes these kind of wines easier to get. Now, in the business world of wine, there is something called bulk wine, and it is something that you can purchase in huge lots of any particular vintage from any particular, specifically AVA. You can get it more broad, you can get it more any sense, and it's usually typically overflow. Maybe certain vineyards or wineries end up making more wine than they need, or some vineyards just flat out that is all they do. They just bulk make wine, and people can purchase it not only as in a big tub of completed wine, they can complete it fully bottled. I mean, they actually can purchase it, fully bottled. So I'm not sure how these guys do their process. It's perfectly possible they do that situation where they buy it, fully completed wine from a specific vineyard or a specific winery. It seems to be like they say that they get different ones all the time, so they don't really have a specific vineyard or winery they get their wines from. So I'm gonna take a wild guess that they probably use sort of that business model to get their wines. The fact that they etch the bottles, though, tells me that their process is fully built on the etching being the primary source of their business, which, makes sense. They have every major sporting team. They have holidays. They have pretty much, you can custom ask them to etch your own whatever it is you want on a bottle. And they apparently do hand paint all of these, which is just insanely fabulous because I can barely paint anything. So it's definitely an improvement over anything I could even remotely come across. So it is very interesting, though, that they considered, they jumped on the bandwagon, so to speak. Cryptocurrencies are hot, especially a couple months ago, even more hot. But Cross our fingers it comes back around and continues to do well. But for Mano's wine, this is a cool idea for them to sell. We've got Bitcoin, which is the granddaddy of them all, who technically was created in 2008, though it didn't really start being like out into the world in 2009, which seems like the Stone Age is now in technology. And we've got Litecoin, which is basically the son, if you will, of Bitcoin. It's basically a copy of its code, and then it morphed into its own code base. In 2011 is when it started. And then we've got over here, my wife's favorite. It's properly, most people call it Dogecoin, but my wife and I think just like to call it Doggy Coin because it's got a doggy on it. But properly, most people call it Dogecoin. And then that one came out in 2013, I believe it was. And then Ethereum, which is just kind of an entirely different animal than these three. These three are more just like store of value based. Ethereum has this like all kinds of crazy programming and ideas and things you can do within its system. Ethereum came out in 2015, I believe it was, and it's definitely the newest of the four, but it has so many other parts of it right now than the others do. The others are pretty much like, buy it and hold it. That's what we all should do, right? Hold it for good. Because in this world today, we've got, it's kind of becoming the retail investor's world. There's the Wall Street bets world full of stock trading, all kinds of crazy ideas going on. Retailers are taking over so much different parts of the stock world, making stocks go nuts whenever it used to be just about the big corporations all handling the stock market. In fact, I've got my Ape Strong shirt on supporting Wall Street bets, and not only that, the Diane Fossey's Ape Foundation that Wall Street Bets basically gave like a small fortune to, because that's part of their emblem. Apes are just, I won't go into it, but anyway, like I said, not a financial advisor. Don't take any of this as serious advice. Anyway, for this tasting, I've already talked a long time. This is definitely more about the information than the wine today, because technically Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies is the topic. Wine is kind of the small topic today. There's nothing super unique about these wines. It's about what their representation is towards the future and how wine and cryptocurrencies and blockchains will connect more and more in the future, because there truly is not one out there right now that has taken over that industry and kind of shown it how it can be used. So we shall see. But for this tasting, I'm going to open both of these because these are both unique wines. And I'm only going to open one of these four because they're actually all four the same exact wine, like I said. So don't take my financial advice, or don't take this as a sign as my pick of the four cryptocurrencies over here. But I think I'm going to open, I'm going to open Ethereum today. Like I said, don't take my advice. All right, guys, I'll be right back. We're going to start over here with the BTC wines first. Remember, both of these are from Bordeaux. One is the left bank, one is the right bank. And overall, these are both extremely good wines. They're I wouldn't say they're the top tier of both of their regions, but they're definitely going to be an upper tier system because they both just have really good flavor profiles for what they are. I find the Margaux better overall. I tend to find Margaux's pretty good, so I'm not surprised at that. It is heavy on the Cabernet, light on the Merlot, and it's a 2017. And they jokingly say on their website that I have to correct myself, that it can be in cold storage for up to 20 years. And if you know your crypto, cold storage is a term you can use to put your coins away safely so they don't get stolen. And I find that as a nice little jab, towards people who understand crypto when you're buying these. And the other one, the Saint Emilion, is also 2017. It is, I find this to actually be darker of the two wines, but it's heavy on the Merlot, light on the Cabernet Franc. and it's more acidic, less tannin of the two, so they're kind of flipped of each other. Both are got a lot of fruit flavor. I think the Saint Emilion has more red fruit to it than for me, and the Margaux actually has more of a darker fruit sense to it. They're both just really solidly good wines for what they are. And I highly recommend them, you know, even with the cool little BTC logo on them, because fact is only so many of these bottles are made, so they're pretty limited. All right, so over here, guys, remember I said I was only gonna open one bottle. Again, not a financial advisor, so understand that I only opened the Ethereum bottle because all four are the same bottle. I'm just gonna show you guys each little etching because they're kind of cool. Over here we got the granddaddy of them all, Bitcoin. Nice little etching of the Bitcoin symbol on this bottle. All four of these are California Cabernet. It doesn't say what vintage it is, so I guess technically that means they could blend even the vintages as well. This is Litecoin, which is basically the son of Bitcoin in so many ways. It's a quicker version of Bitcoin. And then we've got Oh Doggy, as my wife and I call it, Doggy Coin, or properly pronounced Dogecoin. It's got its little Shiba-Inu doggy on the cover of it. Very, very amazing these people hand paint these things. But again, I just have like paint all over the place. And finally, the one I did open, Ethereum. It's got its little cool symbol on it. And you know, again, Manos is more about their etching and kind of secondary about the wine. And, you know, I have to say, compared to these wines over here, it kind of shows. It's still a good wine by any shape or size. I mean, it's, you know, price-wise, they definitely, I think, if you kind of calculate it all out, you know, just based upon the fact that this wine, you're probably paying more for the etching than you are the wine as far as the price goes of one of these, then, you know, it can't compare to these. I mean, I know this has kind of got its own little labeling going on, but it's just nearly like twice the price per bottle. So, you know, I know price doesn't necessarily mean better wine, but, you know, sometimes it can give you a hint, at least. So when it comes to this wine, I actually find it to be much fruitier, much simpler of a wine too. It's California. It doesn't say where, so we're talking the entire state, blending, whatever. It doesn't have a vintage, so it can even be vintage blended. So I'm not sure where to profile this. It's very like candied fruit almost to me. It's very simpler, like very, very light on the tannin, very, very light on the acids as well. I mean, it has a very sweet aroma for the fruit, so I'm just guessing overall it's, you know, to me this is pretty standard. If you go to your grocery store and you're going to pick up a bottle of Cabernet from like the mid shelves, this is what you're going to get. It's just in this case you're getting a really cool labeling on top of it. So if you want that, in fact, if you've got a favorite sports team or whatever it is, I mean, go to these guys to get it done, because this is some cool stuff. So guys, this is it. Very simple tasting, lots of talking about just crypto. And I hope you look into it. I hope you just do a lot of research before you dive into it to make sure you know what you're doing. Play it safe. You know, as they always say within the crypto world, only invest as much as you're willing to lose entirely, because that is the world of crypto. Again, no financial advice, but just remember that fact. Anyway, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this extremely long rant about crypto and wine, and I really hope all this comes together in a cool little system. NFTs, wine, tracking, everything, because Bitcoin can definitely, and all of crypto can definitely help the wine world get better from here on out. And anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have any questions about crypto, any questions about wine, definitely subscribe. Definitely ask me these questions. Hit me up, whatever method, and I will try to answer as best I can. All right, guys, take care.